I think the Miami Dolphins are getting too much credit for some of the moves that they've made as of late. And I know that's sacrilege to say. Everyone keeps talking about how great Miami has done. And there's been some things I've loved that they've done, some things I think they could be doing a little better. So I want to talk about this and really break down this whole rebuild process, going from a bad team to a good team, and how can they go from a good team to a great team, even though they have a bunch of draft capital. Why I think there's still some mistakes, and why maybe it's not necessarily they're being bad, but just we're giving them credit in the wrong area. So to talk about this, we really have to start off with that famous or infamous, depending on how you look at it, gas mask bong video by Laramie Tunsil. If you remember, in the 2016 draft, Tunsil was, some people thought, could go #1 overall. He was an incredible draft pick with a lot of talent, a great prospect. And because of a video that got posted right before the draft, he ended up falling all the way to 13, which is when Miami selected them. If you look right here, these are the players that were selected right after Tunsil. And let's be honest, if Miami had to select one of those guys, they would have been worse off. Not to say that every single player behind him was bad. I mean, a couple Pro Bowlers, Keanu Neal, Ryan Kelly, also, Will Fuller, who now happens to play for Miami and used to play for Houston, weirdly enough, William Jackson. So there's some good players, but no one was quite on Tunsil's level. And even the few players selected above Tunsil were Sheldon Rankins, Vernon Hargraves, Eli Apple. So chances are, they wouldn't have had a really good dominant pick. And because of this video, they got a good pick. So they got lucky. They got Laramie Tunsil, but they traded Tunsil. And this is what a lot of people are talking about as, man, what a move this has ended up being for Miami, which, let's just get into all the details and talk about what exactly happened. So first, they lose, Tunsil. They also lose Kenny Stills, a 4th rounder and a 6th rounder, and they get back a pair of 1st rounders, a 2nd rounder, and just a couple of kind of depth players. So really, it's the 1st rounder in back-to-back drafts and a 2nd rounder. In 2020, they ended up trading away that 1st rounder. They traded back with Green Bay, and they got a pick and a 4th rounder in return just for going back those 4 spots. They used that to draft Noah Igbenogany, who hasn't exactly been lighting the world on fire and kind of has actually not have been so great as a rookie. So not necessarily the best. They also, this is a smaller thing, they traded up with the Texans to get Solomon Kindley, who, they gave up 2 4th rounders for that because it was towards the end of the 4th round, and it was towards the beginning of the 4th round that they drafted him. Not exactly anything huge, but that's just where the rest of the capital went. So while it is early, so far they haven't exactly been able to capitalize strongly on that pick. But you know what? They got, again, another incredibly lucky masterstroke has just sort of fallen into their laps, where Houston completely falls off and ends up getting the 3rd overall pick. So now you have their 1st and 2nd round pick. So while you kind of screwed it up at the beginning, the capital that you're getting now is way more than Houston thought they were giving up, which is just fantastic. You got to love it. And Houston, this has worked out really well for Miami. I'm not sure I want to give them a ton of credit for it, but they're still okay. But they still, they put themselves in this position to succeed. They saw Houston, I imagine they maybe thought Houston could sort of burst into flames. I doubt they expected a 3rd overall pick, but it wasn't that crazy that Houston would miss the playoffs or something. So that certainly worked out in their favor. And now with that 3rd pick, they're going to get more capital with it. So with the 49ers and Eagles trade, I'm just including all this in one just to make it easier. They traded back with the number 3 pick and also lost a 4th rounder, but gained the number 6 pick along with a 2023 1st rounder. So the 1st rounder in a couple of years, and then a couple mid-round picks, a 3rd and a 5th. So it seems like on paper, yes, they've gotten a lot of draft capital, but it's not like they've really done anything yet with it, right? They haven't had a single player that they drafted because of the Tunsil trade really amount to anything. I mean, if we're being honest, it's just been all draft capital. And while they're set up nicely in the future, it could be a lot better, I think. And so my point isn't necessarily to say that the Tunsil trade was like the Houston Texans won it. Clearly, Houston's in a horrible situation, and we'll have to see what Miami does. It's more so just to say Miami really needs to nail this draft. I don't think people fully realize how important it is for Miami, because if they screw up this draft, I mean, it's going to start to become a bit of a question mark with their drafting, because they did not have the best draft last year when they had a ton of capital. And now to have a ton of capital, they have to be better. They just do. And one very interesting thing about this whole situation that I feel like has got completely swept under the rug is Miami totally screwed up the Minkah Fitzpatrick trade. This is what the Fitzpatrick trade ended up being, when it happened, where they got rid of Fitzpatrick. They gained a first-round pick, which they used on Austin Jackson, who did not have a good rookie season. They might be looking to move on from him, which is, let's be honest, Miami had 3 first-round picks. They might be looking to move on from all 3 of them. That's not very good. And then you have a couple of, Kevin Dotson, Jason Strawbridge. Those are later-round picks. And then, they lose a 7th, get back a 6th. Basically, the key pieces there were Fitzpatrick and Jackson. Now, I know people are going to say, well, Fitzpatrick demanded a trade, and he did, but we still have to bring up the fact that he was under contract. They didn't get a good, really great value back, even though it felt like great value at the time. And on top of this, they completely screwed up the draft pick with Austin Jackson, who hasn't looked good. He's a rookie. Maybe he'll turn it around. But my point is that with all of the credit Miami is getting, you look at what actually has happened with these 2 trades and put them together, it's kind of been a bit rough, to be honest. So this is the full list right here. Everyone they lost on the left, everyone they gained on the right. There's a lot of pieces here, so I'm going to kind of narrow it down a little bit. Right here, this is just the key pieces. So I got rid of, all of these depth guys, players I didn't think really needed to be mentioned that much. I also got rid of any pick that's later than a 3rd. So it's not perfect here, but this is, the big pieces here. They've gained Austin Jackson and Noah Igbenogany, who, again, both guys could end up turning it around, but as of right now, don't look like they have too much value. I mean, if you traded for them, are you giving up more than like a 4th-round pick? Probably not at this point. Now, they still have 2 first-round picks, one of those first-round picks being in 2023, but the other one being this year and a 6th overall pick. And they have a 2nd and a 3rd-round pick, and the 2nd-round pick very high. So good draft capital, but losing Laramie Tunsil, Minkah Fitzpatrick, and Kenny Stills, I'm sorry, that's just not good enough draft capital for 2 star players. If you take out the Fitzpatrick of it all, it does come a little bit better. This is just the Tunsil trade, the key pieces that were left, losing Tunsil and Stills, but they, get back those 2 first-rounders, a 2nd and a 3rd. So really, they just completely screwed up the Minkah Fitzpatrick. This one feels a lot more fair, a 6th overall pick, first-round pick in a couple years, but also a 2nd and a 3rd. That's actually pretty good value still because, again, Houston completely tanked. So that's what I mean when I say I don't want to kill Miami. Miami isn't completely screwing this up, but if they screw up this draft the way they screwed up last draft, it's pretty much, they're in a really rough spot. I mean, at this point, they'll have an additional 3rd and an additional 1st in 2 years, and that's pretty much it. So, they're a playoff team right now, but I do wonder, how do you get to that next level? You got to draft well, and you got to knock it out of the park this draft. Let's be honest. Last year, Tua, a lot of people would have drafted him there, but at the same time, when Justin Herbert goes 1 selection later and you drafted a different quarterback, you're going to get some criticism for that unless Tua turns it around, which he could. Totally possible. And again, same thing with Austin Jackson, same thing with Igbenogany. Hard name to pronounce, but I'm doing my best. You with those 2 guys, they could turn it around also. But again, if they screw it up this year, they're in trouble. That's kind of my point. And I wanted to bring it up because everyone keeps talking about, oh, Miami, unbelievable job they've done. They're all this draft capital, incredible. Well, you got to do something with the draft capital. You also got to turn that into good players. It kind of reminds me of the Raiders when they traded Khalil Mack. Good move, yes, because you have to rebuild. You have to try and get better. So I get it. But you have to also then nail the draft picks. And the Raiders didn't nail the draft picks and are now, they're not in an awful spot. They're not like screwed up, completely screwed. They're probably still better than if they didn't make the trade. But they could have really been a championship contending team and weren't able to get it done because of the draft capital that they squandered. Miami's in a similar spot. let's hope that they don't suffer the same fate. That's what I think. What do you guys think? Let me know in the comments below. Always love hearing from you. And of course, as always, thanks for watching.